Hello, welcome to the Motorsport Review. My name is Perry Brown. I am your host, and I am delighted to say joining me today is one of the OGs. And I mean by that, someone that replied to my very first message on Threads saying they were interested in joining. Unfortunately, timing has kept them away so far, but delighted that today everything has lined up, and it is Eddie. Eddie, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well today. How are you?
Yes, very good. I'm a McLaren fan. No spoilers just yet, but that's pretty good as far
Yeah.
as results have gone.
Yeah,
Um, so,
exactly.
so yeah, it was a bit of a early start to the weekend, but it's gone on, hasn't it? Because we had a sprint race, and I was saying just before we went on recording, I actually completely forgot that we had a sprint race entirely. It's such a long weekend format, but I think that's a good jumping off point straight away is a sprint weekend, sprint format. And how do you find sprint races?
To be honest, I don't really understand the point of sprint races. I think they're entertaining, and they're a fun way to bring more points to the championship, but I don't really understand the point of it, but that's just my personal opinion. I like the sprint this weekend was entertaining, but I felt like not much happened either during that time. So I was like, maybe we could have had a bit more time, like in free practice or like quality for the rookies to get used to the Shanghai circuit instead of having a sprint race. But I don't know. What do you think? What's your opinion on sprint races?
Yeah, I'm much the same. I wonder what they're for. Because I mean, the long and short of it is they were brought in 2020. Obviously, we had COVID affected season. This idea was bandied around like, we got to go to the same tracks twice. Why don't we do something different? Let's run a track the wrong way round or reverse a grid. And so 2021, they brought in these sprint races. They're going to be new, they're going to be exciting. And then what we've ended up with is just an extra qualifying that's slightly shorter and an extra race that's a lot shorter. So Formula One without strategy. And yeah, I spoke about it when we did the MotoGP review a few weeks ago, and I said their sprint format works better, because the nature of motorbike racing is that they can overtake, there's more action, so it is just more. But in Formula One, it's not quite the same. And also what MotoGP do is they do it every week, so at least you know the format. Here it's just like a shock to the system. It's like, oh, suddenly you've got to be up on a early morning on a Friday before you disappear off to work to watch a qualifying, a competitive session. So yeah, I kind of glossed over that a little bit when I was introducing. You didn't really get into it, but you're a newer Formula One fan, and that was one of the first things. As I say, you're one of the OGs replying to that post, and you said, oh, I'm a newer fan, but just how new a fan are you? And this is brilliant, I think.
Well, like we discussed before the recording, this is officially my first full season. So I started watching in June 2024, so the Montreal Grand Prix, because my friend kept bullying me so that I should watch it. She went to free practice and she was like, you have to watch it, it's so fun. And I was like, you know what, I'll give it a go. So we had a couple of friends, we just set up my phone on the table and just watched it, and it was so chaotic that I got into it, and I quickly caught up to the last few years in F1 through that Drive to Survive. Obviously, a lot of my friends told me take it with a grain of salt, which I did, which I realized with this season as well, that it's very dramatic, but it was very instructive as well for me as a new fan. So yeah, it's been only a few months.
Really has. Yeah, I thought it was, when you said new fan, I was thinking, oh, what, maybe a couple of years. But I love that dynamic. There's me been watching F1 since, as we just discussed, since before you were born. So thank you for that moment of just, my hair went slightly grayer as you said that. Yeah, I started watching in 1997, so a good few years before you were born. So there's
I was
people
not
like
even in the plans.
And yeah, there's people like myself that have been watching for years and will say, oh, you have to watch the 2003 season was epic, or the 2008 season was epic. And you get to watch so much for the first time, and to sit and enjoy Formula One through your eyes. And the other thing is that a lot of people always hear the same statement: Formula One is never as good as it used to be. So right now, I hate to tell you this, but Formula One is the best that it will ever be in your following of Formula One.
But I feel like people who are like kind of reminiscing on the past I've looked a few races at the past. I've looked at what it was, and I was like, yes, it was exciting, but I feel like we keep improving in terms of cars, in terms of drivers, in terms of everything, that it makes it always even slightly more exciting. When I watched the 2024 season, I was like, I don't know if this can be any more exciting. And then you see like the first race in Melbourne with like 5 rookies and Liam Lawson. I don't know if you count him as a rookie, but I don't necessarily count him as a rookie. But you have like 5, 6 rookies in the rain on a hard circuit, and you're like, okay, it is going to be as exciting, if not even more exciting as last year. So there's always room for improvement. I think it's always going to be even more exciting. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like as a new fan, it's like you always have some hype coming, even if not all the races are exciting. There's still a little bit of element that makes you like clinch to your seat, and you're like, okay, it's interesting.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that this weekend, because I think it wasn't the most entertaining. When we talk about on track, there was a couple of passes. Obviously, people were moving through, but generally it wasn't as exciting as it was intriguing. There was a lot of debate and talk, which brings us to before the weekend. There was a lot of talk from Australia. Of course, the FIA brought in these more strict rules on the front wings straight away. They measured that. On the rear wings. On the rear wings, they brought in the rule straight away. This is coming from race 9 on the front wings, but they reviewed the footage and said, we're not happy. We want to make it more strict. And of course, everyone just looked straight at the McLaren and said, that's the team that obviously were doing this. And so there's a lot of talk, whose wings moving too much. Technically wise, how much do you keep up with it? I'm guessing you're still learning every time someone talks about some new aero rule. You're like, what new aero rule? What was the old aero rule?
I'm gonna be 100% honest. I haven't really kept up with the whole like flexible rear wing situation. I don't know why. I haven't seen anything about it like in the things that I've read after like Australia. So I'm not gonna be much of help in that. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all. Because this is the thing. Like some Formula One fans just like the racing, they show up. Some people like the drivers' backstories, and some people like myself, I'm a design engineer, I absolutely love the technical side of it. So things like rear wings, I'm like, let's get into it. And then you're talking with people about the because this is to do with the slot gap between the wings, and people pointing at the wing doing this.
Yeah, was it the mini DRS type of shit?
Yes,
No?
yeah, that was it. So
that's what I thought it was about, but I wasn't 100% sure. So I'm like, I'm not gonna try to make it seem like I know my shit.
So yeah, it was to do with that, the wing just coming up as they were going down the straight in Azerbaijan last year.
Yeah. I remember that.
Trying to stop that. So they said, right, the gap along your wing has to stay within 2 mil. And they looked at the footage and said, well, we think it's more. So they said it's got to stay within 0.5 mil, and to stop that wing lifting. So as I say, when people are looking at the wings doing this and shaking, you're looking at the wrong thing. When people are looking at like the bits on the edge of the wing moving, you're looking at the wrong thing. But generally, all the teams then showed up and said, well, our wing's the same as it was in Australia. It was Haas and Alpine with both the teams. And funny enough, watching today, I was looking at the Alpine wing thinking that is moving left to right, and maybe that's part of it. But yeah, it dominated a lot of talk. And I think it will do. This is, again, what we spoke about after the Australian review, that this talk of wings won't go away, especially when the new stricter wings come in Spain for round 9. And suddenly it'll be, well, what's the competitive pace? If anyone drops or gains, well, you can go, oh, have they been cheating up to this point? Because that's what people pin it down to. Our team's cheating.
It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be, interesting to see what's going to happen.
Yes. And as a newer fan, flexi-wings has been around for years, and Red Bull used to be the masters of flexi-wings. I remember the footage of them pulling off one of Vettel's front wings, and the thing just twisted when the guy went to pull it off the car, and you're looking going, of course, how couldn't the FIA not be looking at it? The wing just twisted. But it's just a constant battleground. So that one will come back, but we'll drop it there for now. Everyone's complied with that rule. At least we might talk about other rules later on, but that led us into the sprint race, as I say, straight away into competitive running, because you get one practice on Friday, and then straight into qualifying. So as I say, you're in Canada, which means you're about 4 hours behind UK time. So
Yeah.
it was a late night for you on Friday rather than a late night on Thursday. Is that right? Rather than an early start on Friday?
Late night on Friday. Yeah, late night on Friday, because yeah. Yes, exactly. So I did not go to bed until like 1 a.m., but that was fine. I'm used to it. But I did watch the race. I did remember there was a race.
I wasn't going to get... I'll be honest, I was like, I'm going to record the sprint race and make sure I watch it before qualifying so that if they talk about it. And then the more, seeing the results of the qualifying, because Lewis Hamilton put it on pole position, on sprint pole position. I don't know if you have to call it something different. See, even old school F1 fans don't get this sprint race. Do we call it pole position or not? But he was the quickest person. He gets to start at the front of the grid for the sprint race. And I thought, I've got to see this. And he's alongside Max Verstappen. And you're thinking, oh my God, this is potential for fireworks.
I know. I hadn't watched qualifying for sprint race because I think it was like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. here in Canada. So I was like, there's no way I'm getting up for that. But when I saw the results of quality the next morning, I was like, okay, that's going to be interesting. And it was kind of interesting to watch, but I don't know. I feel like this sprint race was, the sprint race was kind of not uneventful, but just not much seemed to have happened.
Uneventful. That's I describe it as that, really. It gave us a bit of a show because beforehand they were saying you've got this straight at the back of the circuit that's over 1 kilometer long. Overtaking chance is going to be easy. Well, that just wasn't the case with these fragile tires. And this is the thing with sprint weekends for me, is it just gives you a indication of how the race is going to go the day after. So it's kind of like a spoiler in a way.
Yeah, I feel like sprint races are more about how well is your team going to be able to manage your tires throughout like the actual race, more than just it's a race.
That's just it. There's been a few times when it was in its infancy where teams, I remember Aston Martin doing this at Silverstone, where they threw on a soft set of tires and said, YOLO, let's see if they'll get to the end. And they did well initially and then slid back, but overall they gained positions, and so it looked good. But now it's like, look, let's just run the run of the mill. And when you see everyone running medium tires, like, well, it's just completely negated. As I say, it gave us some answers about it. So Lewis Hamilton winning that sprint race and comfortably. What did you make of that performance?
Well, honestly, the first thing that I saw that I realized was I feel like Lewis felt more comfortable with the car than last weekend, than what we saw last weekend, whether it be in quali, free practice, and just the race in itself. And I was like, okay, this is a huge gap from like what we saw last weekend. I don't remember where Ferrari ended. I think it was like P7 and P8, something like that, after the race.
I can't remember either.
I can't remember.
It's already a week ago. It's already gone. But
I feel like I was watching this and I was like, okay, there's a lot more confidence in how he's driving, and I feel like this transposed to him getting pole and then winning, and also being able to fend off like Verstappen and the rest of the grid. And I couldn't help to think as well, like how is Leclerc feeling about that? You know, like, you've been the golden boy of Ferrari for like the past 5 years, 6 years.
He joined Ferrari in 2019, so this is his sixth year at the team.
Yeah, so you've been kind of like the driver that Ferrari has been like prioritizing, and then suddenly your teammate just comes in and grabs pole on the second weekend of the sprint race. It's going to be an interesting development in Ferrari this season, but I feel like after sprint race, I was pretty confident for a good Ferrari weekend, and then, well, not to spoil,
and then
but
maybe not quite after that. So it was a good race for them, and as a McLaren fan myself, I sat there going, this is it. This is where the battle begins, because as you say, we didn't get that in Australia. You know, McLarens were looking even more dominant than today, again, given the result. But yeah, Piastri started third. He moved up through Verstappen. So again, it kind of gave you a hint, because everyone's been saying that the real advantage of the McLaren is the long run pace. So again, it kind of looked like that. But once Piastri was passed, that gap grew, say from 2 to 6 to 7 seconds or so when he finished. So again, I was watching that thinking, this could be a very interesting race tomorrow. And it didn't quite play out that way, as we say, but it gives you a good indication that tyres were going to be the big talk of this weekend. And going to the other end of the order, then, so you mentioned the rookies, and whether you count Lawson as a rookie in his 13th Grand Prix weekend, qualifying 20th, not only on Friday but also, pardon me, qualifying 20th on Friday for the sprint race, but also then repeating that consistency, at least for the main event on Sunday. So not quite the weekend he's after, certainly not in qualifying. He did make some decent moves in the race. He got his elbows out a bit, damaged his front wing doing so, because that's what happens. But yeah, what did you make of Lawson's, should we say, weekend at this point?
I'm going to start really by disappointing some people, saying that I'm not a big Lawson fan. But I still feel sad for him, because he's under a lot of pressure right now to perform. And it's clear that Red Bull's going to obviously prioritize Max as much as they can. But he has been, obviously it's only been 2 weekends, so you can't really make a conclusion out of it. But he hasn't been delivering what he sort of promised he said he would deliver. Like, we've seen so many interviews of him saying he was sad to see other drivers underperforming while he was sitting there on the sidelines and not doing anything, which implied that he would perform better. And now he's been qualifying, I think last week he qualified 18th or 19th, qualified 20th, and qualified again, like back of the grid. And the Red Bull is not a back of the grid car, but he's bringing it as a back of the grid car. So it makes you wonder, is he the problem, or is Max just that good?
It's definitely the question, isn't it? At the moment, on everyone's lips, where is that Red Bull car?
Yeah, where is it supposed to be? Is it actually supposed to be at the front of the field where Max is dragging it, or is it now a back of the field car or a midfield car that Lawson is just showing what the true car is this year? So I feel like obviously it's a crappy weekend for him, and I hope he can improve at least a little bit, because that's not going to end well for him, because we all know Red Bull and their beautiful managing techniques. Yeah. In a world of Helmut Marko's, be Anthony Hamilton, I think, is the answer to that, because he hasn't helped the situation, has he, Helmut Marko? No. But yeah, it's a boiler pot. The Red Bull development program, you get dropped in and you're just told to go at it, just sink or swim. And most of these people that end up in this cursed seat tend to sink, unfortunately. So yeah, not the weekend he wants. And let's get into the rumor. I sort of put it towards the end of the show, but we're here now. I wasn't sure if you wanted to introduce it, but I was like, you know what?
Let's just go for it. Let's just do it.
Let's just go for it.
So the rumor that came out straight after the race, again, bit of an anonymous race from Lawson, even without all the disqualifications that came later on. He's still not anywhere near the points. He's had a bit of an anonymous day. And the rumor is that Yuki Tsunoda will get the Red Bull seat even as early as the next race in Japan, so his home race, which will be, I say, good for him. But again, if this is a cursed seat, would it actually be good for him? So that's the question. Would you want Yuki Tsunoda in that seat or not?
I personally would not. I have a great reason for that. Obviously, we have seen that the second Red Bull seat is absolutely ruthless. And I feel like if I was Yuki, with how much Red Bull has screwed me over the past year, knowing that like he outqualified Ricciardo, he outqualified Lawson, and he outperformed both of them as well, and Red Bull still deciding not to give them the seat, not to give Yuki the seat, even after like he proved that he could outperform his teammates consistently. I feel like I would just start looking somewhere else at another team, because if this team does not want me in their second seat, why would I give them the satisfaction? So I feel like, and I think Yuki has potential. He's not like one of the greatest drivers, but I feel like he's a good midfield driver. So I feel like if he was in the Red Bull, it would make or break his career. It would have an impact, because that Red Bull seat is ruthless, and we know already Red Bull's kind of resistance to putting him in the seat in the first place. So I feel like they're just going to look for more excuses to kick him out if he gets the seat next weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I put on threads today, it seems a bit of a daft move. I've been saying for weeks, maybe like the last year, that I almost don't want Yuki to get the seat, because, as you say, he should go and apply his trade elsewhere and go, do you know what? You don't want me? That's fine. And I kind of get the feeling like at work as well. If, you apply for promotions and your manager doesn't like you, or you start to get a bad feeling about where you are, the best thing to do at that point is typically to go, do you know what? I'll go somewhere I'm appreciated. And Yuki seems stuck to his guns and going, no, I can make a thing of myself. I can do this. I can do what others have failed to do. And the Honda link, especially, you see Adrian Newey in at Aston Martin, you see Honda coming in, you're thinking he could be looking over there. That's my hot tip for him. Look at that one. It's just a risk at this point, surely. Take the, his stock's here, his stock's quite high. He takes the Red Bull seat. It's only going to go down if it doesn't stay level, because he's not going to get in there and beat Max Verstappen.
No, exactly. Obviously, the team are still going to prioritize Max, and because he's still able to bring them championships. So I feel like if Yuki takes accepts the decision of being in the Red Bull, maybe as a permanent seat, it might destroy his career. And I heard some commentators this morning, because I don't watch the races in English. I don't watch I don't watch it on F1 TV. I watch it on a local streaming service. And the commentators were talking about who should have gotten the second Red Bull seat instead of Lawson, and a lot of people were saying Red Bull could have also almost got Sainz. And I feel like putting a veteran in that, that's what I was saying from the beginning when I was talking with some friends a few months ago. I was like, putting a veteran with Max, at least for 1 year, would have been the best option, just to let both Yuki and Lawson develop, get their chance, and then eventually get their chance at a Red Bull seat. But I feel like right now Red Bull's in a situation where they don't have any backup. They don't have a viable backup, because if they don't want to put Yuki in the seat, who are they going to put? It's either they stay with Lawson and lose valuable points for the championship, or what? They're going to put Hadjar. They're not going to put another rookie in the seat, clearly, when it's not working. So they're a bit at a point where they realize they might have fucked up with some of the driver changes in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, if you watch Formula 2, I don't know, that's a good question at this point. Do you watch Formula 2?
Not as much as I would like to. Because sometimes I don't have the time to watch it, just like they don't broadcast it as well. So I try to keep up as much as possible, but I don't watch often.
We'll at some point we'll cover it on the Motorsport review. We'll get into it and see why people should be watching it. But I know it's a big drain on people's weekends, especially when it's sprint racing, trying to keep up with. Formula One Academy was back this weekend as well. The reason I asked was because you watch Formula 2 and every other car that goes through the shot seems to have a Red Bull livery on it. And it's not so much this year. There was one point when they had a quarter of the grid in Formula 2 had a Red Bull livery on it. And you're looking at all these drivers, and this was at the sort of time where Ricciardo was looking like he's going to lose his seat. Perez was holding on for the fact that Ricciardo was not quite as bad as Perez was. That was Perez's saving grace for a long time. And Hadjar is the one that got promoted. Obviously, he fought for the 2024 Formula 2 title, eventually losing to Bortoleto. But now you look and you go, well, maybe the top Red Bull junior is probably Arvid Lindblad. It's his first season in F2. Now, he might go and win the championship. Who knows? But right now, 2025, it's too soon. He's coming from Formula 3, I think. You know, unless you're a Kimi Antonelli, one of these top rookies, the chances of you going straight from Formula 3, doing like a couple of Formula 2 races and up, it doesn't exist. That's not going to happen for Red Bull, and they're not going to do that. So yeah, as you say, there's a bit of a pipeline error here. You know, they can't just burn up these 4 drivers. You know, Max is there to stay, at least this year, and they've got to do something with Hadjar, Tsunoda, and Lawson. They're the 3 drivers they've sort of put themselves in the window of. And so I thought the same about Sainz. I thought they would make a move for him.
I was sure they were going
Sainz.
to try to grab a veteran, whether it be Bottas or like Sainz or just someone who has more experience. At one point, I was 100% sure that they would bring back Ricardo as well, like swap Perez and Ricardo after the break. And when it didn't happen, I was obviously very confused. I understand the whole like contract situation with Perez. I think there was also like sponsor issues, but I feel like Red Bull needed another year with 2 veterans in order to develop, because they're at a point where they're not the strongest team on the field anymore. They're not. So I feel like this year might be the start of their downfall, unfortunately.
So I mean, speaking of, as I said, mentioned in the sprint race, you know, Verstappen, Lawson wasn't anywhere. We can't really even discuss him. But Verstappen, who always drags a good result and the best result out of the team and the car, sprint race, he drops from 2nd to 3rd, as I say, and then he dropped right away, and he was close to being caught by Russell, who, as we saw, had another quietly decent weekend from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Same in today's race. He's sort of he didn't slip back, but he just was anonymous before, in the last 10 laps, just going, wakey, there's a race here, and he suddenly came back at the Ferraris and made a race of it. You know, gave us the entertaining battle at the front. But yeah, as you say, this doesn't seem to be the same car that he even finished 2024 with. And he's saying this is more drivable than that car, but it's not as quick, it seems.
Exactly. I feel like obviously it's a bit weird. It's a bit difficult to make an assessment because Max will drive a tractor in the front of the field if he has to, but I feel like the whole changes that they've had at Red Bull in the past few months, in the past year, whether it be teammates, engineers, whatever, is showing on the performance of the car, not necessarily the performance of the driver, but more the performance of the car. And I feel like if in the next few months, I don't necessarily know all of the like anything, like all the things that are linked with Max's contract at Red Bull. I think he has a contract with Red Bull until 2028.
That sounds about right. It's certainly a long-term contract that he has.
But I feel like if there are no real changes brought by Red Bull in the next few months, I feel like we might start getting some threats from Max, because I've seen that he said in one of his interviews that he feels at his prime right now. He feels the best right now driving in the car. If Red Bull can't give him a car to perform in, I feel like he's just going to drop in and look somewhere else. And I wouldn't be surprised if he threatened Red Bull a little bit with that.
It feels exactly like the Vettel years at Red Bull. I'm sure you've gone back in and looked at it, and you know, it feels very reminiscent of that. You know, you had Vettel won 4 titles, almost unopposed at times, and then the new rules came about, and suddenly Red Bull went at the top, and Vettel basically said, look, Ricardo's coming through, he's your guy, I'm going to go to Ferrari, I'm going to try something else. And he won races there, yes, but he didn't quite get the championship. And it kind of feels like Verstappen's at that jumping off point now as well. He's going, do you know what, Red Bull might nail the rules next year, but without Adrian Newey, it's a big question mark. And it seems that he's already looking at Mercedes and reuniting with Newey at Aston Martin. So I mean, if they lose Verstappen, that is a big blow. That's probably a bigger blow than losing Newey, I would have thought.
Yeah, obviously. And I feel like I saw someone post something, I think it was on Threads, saying if Red Bull loses Max in the next few years, they're probably going to end up a midfield / back of the field car without him. And I honestly kind of agree with that. I wouldn't be surprised. It's a good car. It's a drivable car, but it's the management and the way they move around things, clinching so desperately to Max and forgetting everyone else. is not the way to go. They're so desperately hoping for a second Project Verstappen that they're not letting time to their drivers to develop. And I think that's what's going to hurt them in the future. And that's what's hurting them right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been saying, as I say, I've been saying this for a little while. A lot of fans, saying, look, you can't just rely on one person to pull the team up. And I think, again, watching Mercedes in 2020 and 21 and going, look, Bottas is doing okay, but have you thought about the future? What if Hamilton leaves? And here we are. But they've obviously got Russell now. They've bettered him, and he's doing okay. He's doing all right, this season. So it does happen.
Surprised by Russell's races. Russell is like so discreet on the grid recently, and he's just like sliding past through people and clinching podiums. I was like, all right, why not? A lot of people said that he wouldn't be able to take like kind of that first driver role. I feel like he's taken it pretty well, honestly. I feel like Mercedes, and I was pretty surprised by Mercedes' performance in the last two races because of the struggles that they've had the last season. So it feels like a new Mercedes, and kind of not a rebrand per se, but just a new wave of confidence coming from Russell and also from Antonelli, who's been amazing, honestly, in the past two races. But obviously, it's only been two races, so it's a bit too early to make a huge statement. But I don't know.
I think especially when you think about Antonelli, as you say, he is definitely a rookie. It's definitely his first two races. He hasn't had like any prior experience. And I'll put my hands up. I said on this podcast, it's a bit soon to throw him in, but he's been racing in Formula 2. Give him the chance. Why not? It's just the pressure of being at Mercedes, a top team, and he's risen to it really well. Again, he's put in decent performances. He's not quite at Russell's level. He doesn't need to be. He just needs, like Russell's doing, quiet weekends, getting the job done, moving forwards. And he's done that in both of them. So, quiet optimism, I think, from Mercedes. And they were the only ones, Russell was the only one keeping Lando under pressure today in the McLaren. So they could be buoyed by that, I think. And they arrive in Japan in 2 weeks' time, hoping for more of the same. So, they'll be happy with their first two weekends, no doubt. So very quickly touched on McLaren there, and again, coming into the weekend, they are everyone's red hot favourites. We get to sprint qualifying. That's where we're at, and they qualified 3rd and 6th. Now, straight away, I expected everyone to go, well, this is because of the flexi rear wings, and this is where it was. But I think they got their strategy a bit wrong in qualifying. Did you note this as well, that they went for 2 quick laps in SQ3? So the first lap they're full of fuel, the second lap the tyres have already done a lap, and that's where I felt they got their strategy wrong. But come Saturday, come the main event, and up steps Oscar Piastri to stick it on pole position. So what did you make of their 1 lap pace at McLaren? Not quite where you expected it to be, or where you expected it to be?
Honestly, I don't really have an opinion on this, to be honest. I think I was satisfied with their qualifying. I was satisfied with. I didn't really watch the free practice and the qualifying, but when I saw obviously that Oscar had gotten like pole and I'm blocking. I'm sorry. But for qualifying for the sprint, I didn't really watch qualifying. I just saw the results and I was like, okay, well, they're still there. They're still like, it's not obviously a horrible qualifying. It's not what you expect from like the team that qualified last week, but it's not horrible either. So I didn't really think it was because of the wing. I didn't think anything. I just looked at it and I was like, okay, we'll see how that will pan out.
Yeah, it's another part of the sprint weekend. You got one practice and then straight into qualifying as well. And again, it could be just down to who gets the setup right with only an hour of running before you have to select a setup. So it was interesting, 3rd and 6th, and then Lando Norris doesn't make positions off the start, but then makes an error and loses 3 more positions. He's down to 9th, and you're thinking, oh, okay, right, he's got a lot of work from here. He's not currently in the points, and it took him the whole race to get by Lance Stroll. As I say, everyone's going, he's going to be able to overtake, and it took him the entire race to get
Mhm.
past. And again, this was a hint to today's race. It wasn't that easy to overtake.
No.
So yeah, Norris's weekend. Let's sort of dissect that a bit. A couple of mistakes. Do you think he's ready for the championship? This is a big question, by the way. I'm really sorry, but do you think he is ready to take this championship in 2025?
So a part of me says yes, another part says no, just because he's an amazing driver. He's proved himself time and time again, and he's improved so much in 2024. And I feel like him winning his first race in 2024 and then going on to win more races really upped his confidence. But there's so many things that he still has to work on yet still, in terms of confidence, in terms of mental. Like, he has the physical ability to do it. He's an amazing driver, and I think that physically and professionally, he has the ability to do it, and he has the car to do it. The McLaren has been very impressive so far this season, and also last season in the second part of the season. So I feel like he has the car to do it, but the mental, I think this is where it might get him, because when you look at Max, who's like so unbothered by so many things, and even when you look at Leclerc or even Piastri, he is more easily bothered by little issues during the races that might cause these mistakes. Like, I think, if I remember correctly, during the whole race in Australia, we had so many radios from his engineer saying, "You're okay, calm down, you've got a gap, you've got a..." So I feel like this stress and this mental, like, his mental capacity of like calming down is not there yet. But I feel like if he works mentally on himself and on the fact that yes, he's capable and yes, he has the ability, I feel he could clinch a championship this year. But it's all about the mental, and I think that physically he's capable of, mentally a bit more work, but it's not impossible.
Yeah, he has this ability in himself to be very critical of
Mm-hmm.
himself. He doesn't hide it very well, as you say. In interviews, he's there going like, "Oh, today was a bit rubbish," and yes, he finished the race in second. But as you say, his ability to sort of squash everything down and just go, "Okay, I just need to concentrate on me," and that's at that moment, that's where I think Piastri's the stronger race. I can already hear all the McLaren fans like knocking down my door as I'm saying this and shooting him down.
Exactly.
I don't think... So I like the dynamic. I just bit of context for this. I asked you yesterday. I said, "Oh, who do you support, by the way?" And I was very glad that you gave me a list of a few teams, a list of drivers. Piastri, Norris, McLaren didn't feature in that list, and I said it's kind of good. I like that there's a mixed opinion bag here. So I'm vocal for McLaren, and you're vocal for, I think, Alpine and Ferrari. You said, and
Yeah.
you said you're against, but you weren't as keen on McLaren as you were the drivers. So you'd like to see Norris get the job done, and I think we're all hoping that.
I would be delighted to see either Norris or Piastri be able to like grab a championship. I don't necessarily agree with some of McLaren's strategies or ways of managing sometimes. I think I've been frustrated a couple of times last season, but I feel like,
believe me, as a McLaren fan, yeah, we feel that as well.
I feel like Norris has, and I think it's wonderful that Norris is so open about his mental health in a sport where it's so you're always got to be at your top, you always got to be like perfect, and you have you have to have this perfect image on the media and with people and everything, because everything you say can be turned against you. I feel like it's wonderful that he's so open about his mental health, but at the same time he's got to be a bit more quiet about that, in a way that like it's getting to his head so easily that this is the problem that he has, compared to like Piastri. Piastri always seems so unfazed with so many things, and it does not, like, when he's so unfazed, and he's so just not non-reactive, but like a bit more contained than Norris. And I like the dynamic that this duo has, and I think it's a great team. But I feel like if Norris wants to step up and get that championship, he's got to learn a bit more from Piastri on how to manage emotion and especially disappointments.
Yeah, 100% with that. And yeah, as you say, not every weekend's going to go your way. And I think it's a positive that, you know, the weekend wasn't very clean to begin with for McLaren. Say a couple of errors in qualifying, they didn't get their laps in necessarily without fault. The sprint race again, as I say, that one tiny little error gets two wheels on the grass and then loses 3 positions. And as you say, it was coming on the radio. I've got this right, haven't I? He's saying, you got to do something to help me pass. And it's like, what are they gonna? They can't bring you in for a pit stop. They can't offer like a new engine mode that will suddenly boost you down the straight. And you're thinking, I get the desperation, but as you say, just, you know, calm, just keep plodding on, keep doing what you're doing, and know that if it's going to come to you, it's going to come to you. And otherwise, it's just, that's part and parcel of racing. So yeah, it got better from there. But we should get to, because we're focused on Norris then, was he's second. He's had his battle with Russell, you know, managed to get by him. And by the way, I was really pleased with him at that moment for getting his elbows out. That was one of the things I felt he needed to do. But come towards the end of the race and he's got this brake issue. And again, we're straight back into, he's on the radio. They're telling him, please, it's getting critical. And yeah, what do you think of that? Because there's a lot of discourse on Threads and that other app that we shall not mention about this.
I honestly was expecting the worst when he mentioned the brake issue. I was like that it would be so unfortunate for him to just have a huge like his brakes just stopping and him like losing so many positions because of that, because we've seen the same problem with Alonso in the beginning of the race. So I was like, let's hope it's not that as well. And obviously hearing like his engineer on the radio saying like it's critical, be careful, everything. I know that he still wanted to keep his position because he had a great position and wanted to keep, it was Russell behind him, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, he had a like 9-second gap.
Yeah, so he had a pretty decent gap to afford, in my opinion, to like loose it up on the brake a little bit and not push as much. Anyways, there are like only a couple of laps left in. So why do you want to risk your entire race, especially when your engineer is warning you almost every lap to let it go? And he's had it's not like as if Russell was like 0.5 seconds behind him. He had a comfortable gap of like, 9 seconds. So I feel like this is the time where it's another example of Norris getting into his head and kind of like stressing out for nothing. Well, not for nothing. Obviously, you always have some adrenaline and some stress during the race, but just like he stressed out so much on the brake issue for no reason, because he had a comfortable gap. So even if he kind of like slowed down a bit or just like was more careful, he still would have had that position. So I feel like this is one of the things that McLaren should pull Norris aside for like a few minutes and say, hey man, you got to listen to team orders. You got to listen to like what we tell you, and you got to get out of your head, especially if you know what you're doing and we know what we're doing. So I think that this is one of the main things that Norris should work on. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. He could feel the brake pedal. He's talking to the engineers about it. It felt like for me that someone that's, again, this is Norris's 7th season in Formula One, someone that's watched him through that time and been impressed by what he's doing. This felt like the Lando Norris who sees his teammate up ahead and he knows that the championship battle is probably his teammate up ahead. And he's thinking there's just 3 seconds between us. And he's still thinking of the race win. And he's still thinking I can have, there's 7 laps left when this brake issue appeared. And he's still thinking, no, I've got to keep pumping in these laps that are going to put Piastri under pressure so that he makes a mistake or I catch him up. And I think that was, again, where he needs to learn and go, do you know what? Okay, Piastri's probably keeping something in hand. If I get close, he's just going to pull away again. And to think, no, actually, I have an issue here and I need to just take stock. And as you say, use that 9-second gap, 8 seconds, whatever it was to Russell, and go, I need to just make sure I bring this home. Luckily, it didn't, as a McLaren fan. Other people probably go, no, I wanted the championship to be spicy. I wanted to see him go out, but to see him bring it home, that's a great 1-2 for McLaren today.
it was an amazing race for McLaren, but I was so stressed out in the last few laps, hearing the radios of the engineer saying, "Be careful on the brake, be careful on the brake, it's critical." I was like, he's gonna lose his brakes, and there's gonna be a like he's gonna DNF. He's gonna. Fortunately, he did not, but I was stressing out for that because, yeah, it was. But this race was interesting because it felt like not much happened, yet so much happened as well.
Yeah. And whilst we're focused on McLaren, I sort of touched on the battle that Norris had with Russell, and they kind of avoided team orders. So again, if you watch Hungary last year, again, a lot of problems came McLaren's way when they had a very similar situation. Norris running second with a smaller gap, and in Hungary, they pitted him first, and he emerged in the lead. And they said, no, that was Piastri's lead. We've done it to protect you. Now today, we saw almost like the alternate reality to that. We'll pit Piastri first. He's earned that, and you're going to be under pressure. And he did come out behind, and I thought, again, brilliant bit of racing. He had to get that move done straight away, and he did. And it was, again, elbows out, as I mentioned. It was good to see a little bit of wheel to wheel in a race that didn't see too much of it. So,
no, exactly.
So yeah, the strategy call, as you say, you're glad to just see McLaren let them race to that extent and to do things the right way, I think.
I think that McLaren has started to learn about their mistakes from last year of the whole papaya rules type of thing. And I feel like while it can be beneficial in some races, when there's a clear drive, like there's a clear sighting of who should be prioritized, this is not the time for papaya rules. Obviously, now it's just the second race of the season, so obviously let them race. Let's see who's going to come out on top, and then let's see who we will prioritize for this championship. And I think that was
absolutely.
And I think that it was a clean racing from Norris, clean racing from Piastri. I feel like they've improved a lot in terms of maturity from last year, and I'm very, very intrigued as to what the rest of the season will bring.
Yeah, absolutely. Piastri had probably one of his strongest weekends in Formula One that I've ever seen him put together. 1 point away from maximizing the weekend in terms of points. Just that second place as opposed to first in the sprint. I thought it was really good from him, and I backed him as my bold claim to take the championship. And now I don't think it's so bold. I do think Piastri only 8 points back, and just if you undo the Australia spin, which slick tires in the wet conditions, anyone could do that. You undo that, he's leading the championship. So very definitely people need to talk Piastri championship material.
And Piastri is resilient as well. We've seen it in Australia. Not a lot of drivers would have attempted to get out of the grass and finish the race, but he did it, and he managed to still get points. And so I feel like this resilient mindset could help him in the championship as well this season.
Yeah, absolutely. So a team that didn't quite get it so right. Let's move on to the Ferrari talk, unfortunately, at this point. So a brilliant, we mentioned already, that Saturday of ecstasy, Lewis Hamilton's first pole in red, Lewis Hamilton's first sprint race win in red. Everything's going their way. Everything's going to come out red, and this is going to be their weekend. And then qualifying even doesn't go their way. Again, back to that anonymous sort of depths behind Mercedes, behind Verstappen, and their race wasn't. I mean, first lap, they're in at each other. Leclerc breaks his front wing, and it's kind of interesting, wasn't it, that Leclerc breaks his front wing, and yet he was quicker than Hamilton over the race distance.
That was crazy. I was fully expecting him to have to pit, but no, he still just continued. And I liked the way that Hamilton reacted when the team was like, "We're going to ask you guys to switch." I think obviously he understood that Leclerc was probably faster than him, and he was like, "Okay, but let's do it in a safe space because there's car in the front, there's cars in the back. Let's do it in a turn that's not going to cause an accident." So I quite like that, but yeah, I feel like this is going to be. It feels like there are a lot of conflict as well between Lewis Hamilton and his engineer.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get it.
Ricardo Adami. Yeah, there's going to be a bit of a learning process, isn't there, with him? And they seem to be getting there. You know, the frustrated calls of Australia weren't there. You know, there was, as you say, there was them saying, look, you'll do it into turn 13, 14. He went, no, I'll do it into turn 1. Thank you, leave it to me. But yeah, there's a lot. You know, we saw in Australia probably not the cohesion between a new team and new driver that you would expect to see, you know, and then arrive, as you say, in China straight away, bang, pole, bang, sprint race win. And you're thinking, oh, okay, like we're going to do this from race 2, are we? Like, I thought, you know, we're looking at mid-season before he really cleans up and gets the cohesion that you'd sort of expect. So out qualifying Leclerc, who I think, and this is another controversial claim I've made on the podcast before, that Leclerc's a better qualifier. So for Hamilton to do that to him, I thought that was, you know, that's signs to be hopeful. But as mixed as their Grand Prix went, it was nothing compared to what followed afterwards, of course, when
that was...
so there's a time, there was a time some years ago where if you told me that the Ferraris were under investigation, I'd be sort of jumping around the room going, oh my God, yes, Ferrari, that cheats, as they always were to me, like cheating red team. Sorry, Dad. My dad's been a Ferrari fan since he was 11. My daughter knows the red team as the cheating red team. So there would have been years of going like, yes, but I genuinely, this year, one of the big talking points was McLaren versus Ferrari, and I want that fight. I want a championship fight. I want them going tooth and nail for every race win. The races haven't gone that way, and now what a blow to their championship. The few points that they managed to gather compared to where they expect to be, and they lose them back thanks to Leclerc was underweight, wasn't he? That got it the right way around. Charles Leclerc underweight, so was Pierre Gasly, thrown out for the same thing, and Lewis Hamilton for excessive wear on the floor. I mean, Leclerc's I can understand is probably down to tyres. You know, they were expecting 2 stops. It was a 1-stop race, so these tyres have gone a long way. But the floor, they just went, mismanaged that, miscalculated it. So yeah, what's your thoughts on the double disqualification for Ferrari?
Well, first of all, I'm just gonna have to say it hurts my F1 fantasy a lot. My F1 fantasy team's ouch. But also it's just, it's not going, like when we were like in testing in Bahrain and Leclerc was talking about the car and they did the car reveal and everything, and especially with the results of last year, I was so confident for Ferrari to like be one of the dominant teams at the beginning of the season, or just like have some sort of dominance, not necessarily like pull a Red Bull in 2023 and dominate every race. But I was like, we have such an iconic duo of drivers, 7-time world champion in red, plus Leclerc, who's been amazing last season. And so far it's been a series of unfortunate events for them that made it so that Ferrari is struggling right now. And I think it's sad. It's sad for Leclerc. It's sad for Hamilton, because Hamilton was hoping for new beginning, new opportunities, new everything. And so far it's just disappointment after disappointment, even after a good weekend. And I feel like that's going to be interesting to see how it develops throughout the season. And one thing that I quite like is the fact that Leclerc is getting more and more sassy on radio with his engineer. I
think he's learning from Hamilton. If he can do it, I can do it too.
Yeah, if it's okay for him to kind of complain, I'll complain as well. And honestly, the words of wisdom is my new motto. I
did like that. Yeah, my car's full of water. That will be the water.
I want to make a Google document and share it to people, just titled "The Words of Wisdom," and put every unhinged radio of Ferrari in the past few years, and give it to Ferrari at one point.
Only 2 years. Again, you can go back through many years of these kind of calls, and
I know.
I mean, got to hand it to them. They were only talking about Plan C today. Like normally they're on like Plan M by like that point in the race, So yeah, it seems to be cleaning up, but yeah, today will be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Just look to Saturday. Saturday was your day. You had a brilliant run, and we'll take that as, Ferrari will come back at this fight. I'm sure they're going to keep developing that car. And I mean, my pre-season prediction was that Ferrari would be the team to beat. Certainly how they finished last year. When we saw testing, that's when I switched. That's what I said on our prediction show. I said that's when the moment that I switched and said, actually, I think McLaren are the team to beat. And then it's obviously transpired that way. So when people say don't watch testing, it doesn't mean anything. Actually, it does tell you some things, it turns out.
It does. And I feel like obviously Ferrari can bounce back from the 2 disappointing weekends that they've had, but it's going to be difficult. It's not going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be, because McLaren are the team to beat this year. And I don't know what they fed their car, but oh my God.
Yeah, this is where, like, as a McLaren fan, if I try and talk too much, it sounds too unreal at this point to say this is the car we've got. And I did like almost as soon as Australia happened, I was saying this at work, people going that I was seeing people go, oh, that McLaren's too dominant. We need to like find a way to pin it back so we get and I'm like, no, hang on. 2023, I sat and watched Red Bull win all but one race. When McLaren don't win every race this year, we can't have that discussion. But when they win every race, let's talk about it in 2026.
Yes,
absolutely.
Exactly. 100%. We'll let you have your moment.
Red Bull
has had its moment. Now I think it's time for. But I'm really happy to see where McLaren has come, because from what I've seen in the past few years, obviously I haven't watched all seasons of the past few years, but they've struggled a lot. And now seeing them, the first team, front of the field, performing, it's amazing. It's an amazing comeback, and I'm really excited to see how that's going to pan out in the next few years.
Yeah, we were talking today, me and other McLaren fans in a group chat on WhatsApp, and we said, do you remember when McLaren were in the midfield? No. Do you remember when we were at the back? No. Do you remember when we couldn't finish races? It was like a double finish was something we celebrated at that point. So I'm keen to see Ferrari bounce back. I'm keen to see a battle. Right now we've got the car, but we're not dwelling on it. And as I say, hopefully from Japan, it'll be back with us. And we've got to keep an eye on Mercedes and maybe even Verstappen. So it's
Verstappen Racing Bull.
Well, talking of tips, so Verstappen's got all of Red Bull's points, but on that point, we got to hand a note at this point to Lance Stroll as well.
I honestly was about to ask you if you wanted to talk about Lance Stroll.
Absolutely, let's do it, because I mean, there was a stat. So if Lance Stroll decided in 2023 and 2024 that he wasn't interested in Formula One, he's going to go do tennis, and he said to Aston Martin, do you know what, just park my car up for 2 years, their championship position would have been unaffected, completely unaffected. He didn't give them the points that made the difference. It was all Alonso. So fast forward to 2025, Alonso has 0 points. Lance Stroll is doing the business for them. I'm sure as time will go on, when Alonso's allowed to finish a race or doesn't crash out of a race, that it will change again. But I think regardless of that, Lance has finished in the points in Australia, in the sprint race, and today again as well. And I think we've got to hand it, where credit's due. He's doing all right this year. He's got a handle on it.
I am actually so surprised. So as a Canadian, obviously, even if he's one of the most hated drivers on the grid, you still have to have a little soft spot for him because, well, he's the only Canadian on the grid. So, but I was actually so surprised of seeing how different his attitude seems to be from what we saw last year versus this year. He seems to be a bit more into it, more present, more motivated in racing. And I might be, like the commentators were saying today during the race, might be because obviously there's Adrian Newey now, there's the possibility of having an even better car, but I feel like something has changed. I have no idea what, but I feel like I feel like he could have an interesting season, honestly. I think that what he's delivered so far, it's only been 2 races in a sprint race, but I feel like there's the little spark that might have like been fanned out in the past few years is now reignited. And I think that this could be very interesting to see how Aston Martin is gonna do this year.
Absolutely. I mean, Aston Martin, when it comes to 2026, they're the team. They're one of the teams where their driver lineup is going to be the most talked about, because obviously it'll be the first. You know, if we discount Adrian Newey working really on the 2025 car, he'll be focusing on that 2026 car. So his first Aston Martin. I don't think it's fully set that Alonso will have one of the seats, but I also, for the first time, don't think it's fully set that Lance Stroll will get the other one either. I think he's racing for his seat as much as anyone. And I know people go, well, but it's his dad's team, but I think you don't spend the money that they have on Adrian Newey and then bring Honda in if you're just happy just doing this just for your son to go racing. That isn't what this team is, what they're about, and what Lawrence Stroll's set out to do, you know, developing the whole factory, everything they're doing. So I think it's time, as you say, that Lance steps forward and goes, I want this as much as anyone. And if anyone goes, then sorry, Fernando, it's going to be you that goes. So yeah, it's about time. It's, you know, it's really right at this stage now where he steps forward and goes, I can be that guy. If you're going to sign Tsunoda, if you're going to put someone else alongside me, heck, if you can go for Verstappen, they're going to be my teammate, not Alonso's.
Yeah, I completely agree. Last season, I was talking with some friends, and I said, I feel like in the next few years, if we see Lance leaving Aston Martin, it's going to be it's going to be his own decision and not the team. But I feel like this year, with all the changes and everything, I feel like it might, if he leaves the team, it's going to be Aston Martin's decision and not his decision. So I feel like this is playing out, and I wouldn't be surprised to see a whole driver lineup change from Aston Martin in 2026. I honestly, as much as it pains me, I feel like I wouldn't be surprised to see Alonso retiring after 2025, especially if, for example, the season does not go the way he would like it. And I'm interesting to see. I think it's interesting to see where Aston Martin is going in the next few years. If they're going to keep Stroll, if they're going to keep Alonso, if they're going to pull a Haas and change completely their lineup for 2026. Are they going to try to get Verstappen if everything goes bad with Red Bull this season? I don't know. It's a team that is going to be interesting to look at in the next few years, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. As I say, I think the full focus will be on them and who their drivers are. So yeah, a good time to step up to the plate. And so we're going to stepping up to the plate. Then let's finish up with the Haas team and their drive today, because I mean it was 7th and 10th, which is already a great result. One of the Haas ahead of Antonelli, who said is doing a really good job in the Mercedes, but obviously a few disqualifications later to some red cars, and they actually finished 5th and 8th. And I think that's, again, hats off to them. That's absolutely phenomenal for them. Big points today.
I quite like the lineup at Haas. I know that, again, Ocon is not one of the most liked drivers on the grid, but I was interested to see how he would do in Haas, and obviously big fan of Ollie. And I think this weekend was redemption weekend for Ollie Behrman compared to the catastrophic weekend he had in Australia. And I feel like, honestly, the results kind of like portray really well how much the team has improved in one weekend. And I think that even if they're more of a midfield / back of the field car, they're going to improve. They're going to get better. And I think that it could be great competition for the rest of the grid. Maybe not, obviously, probably not like McLaren or anything, but I think that it's going to be interesting to see these two driving. And I think I was very, very happy for Ollie this weekend because he did amazingly well. And finishing the place he finished, amazing. For a rookie, well, yes, he's technically a rookie because he's only driven, 3
He
So
drove 3 before last weekend,
three before
so
last week.
this is race 5, weekend 5.
Yes. So for him to have like improved so much in the past few races and also drastically improved compared to Australia, I think it's amazing. I think I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, I think as I say, he did 3 races last year. I think it's almost quite easy to get parachuted into a team and told you're doing this weekend for one reason or the other. No one's expecting anything of you. You're not contracted. You're not driving the car the weekend after. So if you go for an overtake and it doesn't quite work out, then so be it. But no, he arrived in Australia. He seemed his confident self. It didn't quite go well, and you sat there going, has he just put too much pressure on himself? And I think this weekend answered that yeah, he just reset. It's a sprint weekend. It's not a straightforward weekend. A lot of pressure, a lot of competitive sessions, and he's just held himself up, like held his own in all of them. Yeah, so no, a really strong weekend, and that midfield fight is going to be as interesting as that fight at the front. And it probably could have been racing balls, should have been racing balls. They opted for the 2 stop, and then I listened to the Sky Sports F1 feed, so we had Martin Brundle and David Croft, and I liked Martin Brundle's analogy where he basically said that seeing the racing balls pit is like the first dance at a wedding, when you go and jump on the dance floor and go, come on, and you go for a dance and you look around and no one's there with you, and you're just standing there and you're kind of like, come on, no, everyone else, like I came because everyone else is meant to come with you. And it kind of felt like that they opted for the 2 stop and no one went with them. So yeah, their result probably doesn't vindicate where they actually were on pace. So that's going to be an interesting fight. Haas getting a good amount of points, racing bulls qualified really well, could be in that fight. So yeah, interesting to see that over the rest of the season. And Alpine not far away, even Sauber not far away from that fight. So
I feel like I don't know what's going to happen with Alpine, especially with Duhan. I feel like obviously we've heard like the entire rumors with Colapinto and everyone kind of pressuring Duhan to perform, and I think I would unfortunately not be surprised to see him being dropped in a few races if he continues to perform the way he's performing, because he hasn't pulled exactly the best results that we've seen that the car could pull in the past few months. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I think the midfield fight is going to be interesting as well.
Yeah, I completely forgot about doing, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's the
he's
problem.
having that kind of weekend at the moment. Gasly quietly going about it, and the Alpine hasn't really been there. But yeah, Doohan obviously had Abu Dhabi end of last year, and I watched it and thought, this guy is so off the pace. I still don't agree with Helmut Marko's comment that I think he called him a C-rate driver, which is just...
No, he called Bortolesso that, no?
Oh, that was it. Yes.
Bortolesso
C-rate driver, I think, and Colapin, Doohan, a B-rate driver. I can't remember which way around.
Something like that, yeah.
It seemed unfounded given that Lawson's put himself as a G-rated driver or something. But yeah, it seemed unfair. But again, give him time to get up to speed. But yeah, it's Colapinto's there. They're not hiding it. The shots to the garage. Colapinto stood there.
It's kind of
a matter of time.
It's kind of a Ricardo situation all over again, where anytime Doohan messes up, you see the pan out to Colapinto. Anytime that Ricardo messed up, you saw the pan out to Lawson. And I think it's only a matter of time, which I'm really sad about, because I think Doohan had great potential, but I feel like Alpine are kind of like pulling a Red Bull, but without the performance.
I said I think they were a bit shell-shocked still from 2021, I'm going to say, where they were shocked that Alonso, who they thought was their driver, went to Aston Martin. So they immediately fired back and went, right, Piastri's our race driver. And he turned around and went, actually, it's my understanding that I'm not. I've signed a deal elsewhere. And then, of course, the rest is history. And I kind of feel back of that.
And now they're collecting reserve drivers like Infinity Stones.
Yeah, yes. So I feel like, yeah, they were like, we got to put Doule in case someone just snaps him up. And
Hmm.
then Colapinto was available. And like, we got to snap him up. And they've got Kushmaini in Formula 2 as well. You know, as you say, they've got these options now. And I think maybe Briatore, whoever is in the background putting the strings, going, look, what's the contract term? Does he need to do 5 races? And then we'll swap Colapinto in and go, oh, well, it's based on. But yeah, it's an interesting talk there, whether how long Doing gets and whether they're just waiting at this point. But I think we're getting close to wrapping up on an intriguing weekend. As I say, it wasn't
Yes.
one full of wheel to wheel action. It wasn't one full of high stakes drama. It was one full of stories and tidbits for the rest of the season, really. You know, like the story of the tires, who can look after the tires better, the long running pace. Can Ferrari go a weekend without Ferrariing the whole thing up? You know, those kind of questions.
Yeah.
So it's setting up an intriguing season. And of course, the Tsunoda Lawson potential swap. So from all of that, if I can ask you the 2 questions then. So who was your driver of the day? And what was your highlight of the race? Let's say the race weekend, not just the race.
Driver of the day. Wow. I've got a few, but honestly, I gotta say Ollie, just because I think despite being fairly quiet in the race, he's put on an amazing performance. And also I really like the 2 radios of just hearing him say ciao and just, while overtaking. I thought that was really funny, but I think that he's my driver of the day because he's improved a lot. He's proved himself to be obviously that like last weekend, forget all about that. This is not who I am as a driver. This is not my worth as a driver. This weekend is a bit more representative, I think, of what he can bring. And I feel like even though he didn't do a podium, didn't like finish like P1, P2, or P3, just him performing the way he performed, being completely different from last weekend, I think could be easily my driver of the day.
That's brilliant. My driver of the day would have been Ocon. I could go over. I think both of them. Yeah, both of the Haas drivers had a brilliant weekend. I'd love to say Piastri, but I think then people just go Brit bias and McLaren fan. Oh, of course. So Piastri will have more wins this year. He'll have more chances to get my driver of the day. So I'll give
I
this
can say
one.
Piastri. I can say Piastri if you want. I'm not British. No British bias on my part.
Oh, so you said Piastri. Excellent. No, of course. I think the Haas drivers deserve, like you picking Behrman, me picking Ocon. I think that's a good mix. They had a really good, strong weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't put a foot wrong. As you said, the point you made about Behrman actually was brilliant there. Like the fact he's turned a pretty disastrous weekend around and just had a really good, solid weekend. Got some serious points for the team. Has been brilliant. So your highlight of the race weekend, then, if you've got one?
Honestly, I have no idea, just because it's been an eventful weekend, but at the same time, not much happened. So it's very tough to like pinpoint exactly. But I would say, honestly, the unexpected Lewis pole and victory from the sprint probably was my highlight. Just waking up in the morning, seeing sprint quali and seeing Lewis Hamilton qualified pole, and I was like, all right. And then seeing the race and him defending his place, and even during a fairly uneventful sprint race, just seeing him defend this and giving a little bit of hope to Ferrari fans. I feel like this could be the highlight of my weekend.
I'm hating myself now for playing podcast host and letting you go first. I was thinking I could jump in when you're like, oh, I'm not sure. I was like, well, I'll go, because I thought you were going to pick what I was going to pick, and you did. Hamilton winning the sprint race, that first race in red, giving all the Tifosi that thing they wanted to see. I don't think I can think of anything more unless I pick a McLaren 1-2. But again, I can't do that as a McLaren fan. I don't know, but yeah, you'll go with either win there. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was a really good feeling seeing Lewis Hamilton win that race. Prove any doubters wrong. If he had any doubters, I don't think he did, about this being the right move. Yeah, that was a good feeling all around, I think, on that one.
I'm going to be 100% honest. I had some doubts seeing Lewis go to the Ferrari, like not on his performance, but just on this is either going to be the moment where he stays for the next few years or immediately retires after this year. And I don't know how that's going to pan out, but I've had some doubts. But seeing him win a race, being able to win a race with Ferrari, I think, okay, it's going to be an interesting season.
I think there's definitely race wins to come this year. I like that a lot of the questions about his move to Ferrari was, well, he won't win races there. And that got me thinking, was when was the last time that someone signed for Ferrari as a full season driver, not just stepping in for a few races, that didn't win a race as part of that time? You're looking like you'll remember. I tell you, I didn't remember. I didn't know. I looked it up. 1992, Ivan Capelli was the last time that a Ferrari driver signed up, was driving for the first full season, didn't score a win. So, I mean, if that repeats, then I'll be very surprised. But Lewis Hamilton, a 7.5 time world champion, shall we say, just to avoid all doubt there, 7.5 time champion. If he doesn't win a race this season, or if he's, when he's there next year, if he doesn't win a race at all in his stint at Ferrari, and we're talking about a full Grand Prix, not a sprint race, if he doesn't, then I will eat this hat right behind me. This one is on the line. I will eat that. If he doesn't, he will at some point, I'm sure.
It's impossible for him not to win a race, and it would be so unfortunate if he didn't. If he did not manage to win a single race, it would be so unfortunate. Yeah.
A lot of things would have to go wrong, like, say, for instance, the floor wearing down more than 8 mil during a race. But I mean, who's to say when that will happen next time? So we'll wrap up there. Eddie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure this won't be the last time. I'm going to share all your social links under this in the notes, so people can go and follow you. But it's great to have you on. Thank you for graying my hair slightly by reminding me that, yes, I've been watching F1 since long before you were born. It's been good.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Hopefully it's not the last time, because I've had so much fun just yapping about F1, really.
That's what it's about. That is what it's all about, just having fun, discussing it. And yeah, you've been great. You've been brilliant. You didn't say McLaren in the right places. Your highlight should have been the Astra. But we'll move past. We'll move past.
You can go back, edit that, use AI. Edit that. I'm a full 100% McLaren fan.
The really bad edit as well, when you're like, oh, I don't know, who was my driver of the day? Oh, my driver of the day was Lando Norris. No, thank you so much. And for the Motorsport review next week, we don't have a Formula One race to review, so I'll be trying to pick something that's going on. Maybe NASCAR. I think NASCAR is on next week, so might have to have a look into that, see whether people follow that and find someone. Question for you, do you watch NASCAR? I'm guessing not.
No, it's just I've never really had any interest in it, to be honest. And also it's very fairly American, and I'm trying to not to take a stance, like kind of boycotting a little bit anything that's American right now.
I've ended on such a political point. I can't believe I've done it. Anyway.
But I'm just.
So I might be watching NASCAR next week to see whether people should be
NASCAR Canada, because we have a Canadian edition of NASCAR coming up this season.
I didn't know that.
So
coming up later in the season, the Motorsport review, NASCAR Canada, which I didn't know existed, but we'll be watching that.
They have like a few races, like from like I think June to like September or something like that. Like a few like races that are just in Canada, and it's like some of them are like 30 minutes away from my house. I'm like, you know what? Let's go watch a NASCAR race. I know nothing about NASCAR, but
I don't know anything about NASCAR. That's part of the project, is trying to find other sports. So anyway, next week maybe watching NASCAR, maybe seeing whether it's worth watching, or standing here going, do you know what? Yeah, actually, I don't get it. So that's a good point at this point. If you are one of my 5 listeners, not my mum, because I know you don't watch NASCAR. If you're one of my 5 listeners and you like NASCAR, get in touch and tell me why I should be watching it, and maybe we'll get you on the podcast. But as I say, Eddie, thank you so much for today, and speak to you soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
And No worries at all. Thank you. And to everyone listening at home, thank you very much. This has been the Motorsport Review, and I'll speak to you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye now for now.